I've got a Pokemon problem today, folks, because there's two puzzles in front of me, and yet only one set of acceptable solutions. On one hand, I've got the Pokedoku, a puzzle that requires a set of 9 unique Pokemon in a 3x3 grid formation that adhere to intersecting classifications described by the surrounding rows and columns. And then on the other hand, I've got Pokemon Emerald's Battle Pyramid, a puzzle that requires a team of 3 unique Pokemon that can work together to scale the heights of the dungeon-like challenge and then defeat the Pyramid King waiting at the top. And because 9 so beautifully factors into 3 sets of 3, I plan to craft 3 teams that will not only best the Pyramid King, but when placed on stacking rows will also solve the beautiful Pokedoku. Now normally, such a legendary intersection of solutions would simply be impossible. There's simply too many moving pieces and Pokemon nonsense in play to create 3 winning Gen 3 teams that can also perfectly satisfy the asks of any given Pokedoku. But we're in luck, because a charming and mysterious individual named myself has been given the reins for today's Pokedoku. That's right, me. I made this one. Thanks Pokedoku for having me. So we'll be able to make the impossible possible and solve both puzzles with one go. But why the Battle Pyramid? Why this ultra-specific piece of Pokemon history for my solving the Pokedoku with blank video, you might ask? And it's simply because the Pokedoku puts me in a puzzling sort of mood. And so I thought it made sense to pair it with one of my favorite puzzles in the Pokemon games. Some puzzle-on-puzzle action, if you will. So let's kick things off in the pyramid and bring out the first team for the grid while we do. For the first squad, let's go with an all-Hoenn team and whip out some Droomish classics. We're going to be taking in Frico the Sceptile, a classic name bestowed upon me by Twitch chat. Frico, I don't love that. Alright, Frico has joined the team. Then we'll at long last be taking in the legendary God Sploink. You know, the one from all those comments on my shorts. Because it is finally time for their moment in the sun. And then we've got a final supporting member in Big G the Lanoon, named for its likeness to the main villain of the classic Sega Saturn game Minnesota Fats Pool Legend.
Well, Fats, you hustle me broke.
I want to circle back to Big G's inclusion on this team at a later point, as I have chosen this otherwise unsuspecting Pokemon on account of a specific strength it has only at the pyramid. Because before we talk about anything in the weeds like that, let's break down how the facility operates and what about it makes it my favorite puzzle in these games. The pyramid is extremely unique as far as Pokemon challenge facilities go. While most operate around the core mechanic of battling and winning as many as possible in a row, this is a dungeon that simply wants you to get to the end, and how you get there is completely up to you. There are of course still battles to be had along the way, but rather than being the core benchmark the entire scoring process is built on, they instead act entirely as an obstacle to your success as you work towards the actual benchmark of climbing the floors. You simply need to find the blue tile that warps you to the next level, and it's somewhere hiding in the darkness of this randomly generated dungeon. Get past 7 of these and you'll be sent back to the main desk, effectively acting as a checkpoint with some small rewards tied to the process. There's still trainers hanging around that are hoping to test your skills, but you can avoid them as long as you stay out of their line of sight. And in addition to these trainers, the floors are littered with another unusual mechanic for a battle facility. You'll find wild Pokemon as well that seem to have been chosen specifically for their ability to antagonize your team with stally and status-inflicting moves. Like look at Minun over here, for instance, or the Great Betrayer, as some would call them. This guy lies and cheats every time he uses Thunder Wave on poor sweet Sploink. Well, I've got a joke too, pal, and it's called... So there'll be no more nonsense out of that guy. After any fight you win, the room gets a bit brighter and easier to move around in. So there's a nice consolation prize every time you do get into a battle. And despite the irritation, these pests do illustrate a good point about the facility. This is not so much a challenge about triumph and crushing your foes, as it is about stamina, resource management, and resistance. You simply need to outlast these obstacles as you search for the stairs, not necessarily overcome them. And as such, healing takes on an interesting role here. On one hand, getting healed after battles is nowhere in sight, so it's really you up against the elements as you climb. But on the other hand, items are freely usable and can be found throughout the dungeon, so healing is really as accessible as your ability to find the required tools. Like I got Sploink all patched up with this berry I found on the floor. This comes with some caveats in the name of the challenge though, as you are stripped of all items, even the held items on your team of 3 upon entry to the facility. And while that definitely feels frustrating off off of a first impression, it's one of the main reasons I love this challenge so much. It gives you this untraditional win condition aside from the usual ones that forces you to operate in a different way than you would in the rest of the game. And then that change in focus can culminate in Pokemon with untraditional strengths finally getting their time to shine. This is a brilliant format that rewards creativity and strategic thinking at every turn. I think this is also a more apt description for why I paired it with the Pokedoku as well. I just can't get enough of these puzzles and game modes that get you to use familiar tools in new ways. Like, I can admit that I've never used Barbarical on a Pokemon team before, but we got to have this special moment together for a second there when it solved the water-rock intersection on this daily puzzle. It's pretty cool stuff. And so with the items in the pyramid specifically, they act as a unique resource that teams don't usually have to consider in their battle challenges. But with no after-battle healing and no outside items, foraging is going to be an almost absolutely necessary component of any pyramid climb. I want to rush to the finish line, but I'm probably going to get ambushed along the way, so I should probably try to stock up on at least some items, maybe some potions or a berry or two to make things easier. There's also held items to look out for that can further prop up your team. I'd like to grab a leftovers to get some passive healing on Sploink, and then probably a scope lens for Freako to raise their power level a bit as a coverage focused special attacker. And that's quite the shopping list I've cooked up when you put it all together, so I probably do actually need to go rooting around for all this stuff as I move. I think this is the perfect time to wrap around to our old friend Big G, who can now properly present himself as one of those Pokemon with an untraditional strength. Lanoon comes with the ability Pickup, which gives the user a chance to find an item after the player wins a battle. And obviously, this is an awesome ability to have in this scenario. If I get lucky, it's like I've got an additional little item spawner on my team that could really make the run easier down the road. What I think is really cool about this though, is that this ability is universally an active detriment to a Pokemon in every other normal context of battle. Pokemon with Pickup essentially have no ability at all. It does nothing. But in this contrived, yet still official setting, we've got a set of rules that actually gives a bit of power back to the picker-uppers. It's still not particularly meta by any means, but it's still really neat. I love it. So now, thanks to Big G, I'm loaded up on items and ready to make some waves, and overall we're making some decent progress with the first team. So, how do you win? Completing the aforementioned 7 floors is what it takes to get battle points, and then we'll be looking to fight the Pyramid King after clearing floor 21. The difficulty bumps up slightly after every consecutive 7, but gets reset along with your score if you ever get wiped out. So 21 floors and then a fight with the king. Piece of cake. Team Shiny Sploink was able to make relatively light work of things. There was an incident involving a particularly nefarious Dusclops and perhaps a touch of hubris on my end, but we made it through on the run back, so we are finally up against the Pyramid King. And I like this guy a lot. I don't think he's messing around by any means, but he definitely has more of a theme team going on with his Reggie trio here rather than something really competitively viable. He's like a treasure hunter or an Indiana Jones type or something. I don't know, we're not besties or anything, but that's the vibe I'm picking up, so it's cool that he's got the Pokemon to show for it. It is always weird though when NPCs have one-of-a-kind legendaries on their teams like this. On one hand, it sort of decentralizes the perspective of the player, and it's cool to think that there's other main character types out there catching legendaries. But it also poses some very glaring questions about the Pokemon themselves, because between you and me, I have 3 guys on my PC that look just like his. Well, anyways, we're going head to head with this guy. On my first attempt, I got to the top at a bit of an item deficit, and after Regirock hit the Unreal Omni Boost off of Ancient Power, it was just curtains from there. Really tough, but we're running it back again. Things went a bit smoother on future attempts, but with the builds I was working with, I just didn't have the coverage or tools needed to cleanly take down this team. He had me dead to rights across several battles. So even though I really didn't want to, I made the very sad call to drop Ice Punch for Fire Punch on Sploink. Rip 48 battle points, but it had to be done. The ensuing match was still extremely close, but I was finally able to scrape through the fight. And at long last, Team Shiny Sploink and I gaze out upon this wondrous setting sun atop a legendary pyramid. We are the Pyramid Lords, and we are surrounded by beauty. And that wraps up the first row. Some difficulties, but all in all pretty good. So let's now take a moment to design the second team. I'd like to go with sort of a channel theme team for this one. So obviously we're gonna run Breloom for the middle tile, giving us a grass type column overall. Last video, y'all were loving the little bit I ran where I had the Breloom representing my mom, and I loved it too. So as a special treat to commemorate Breloom's rise to the top of the pyramid, I've arranged for a special shout out from the legend herself for all you lovely folks. Take it away, Mom.
Hello, Drew Nation. This is Drew's mom. I am definitely not an expert on Pokemon, but I am very familiar with the Pokemon Center, where I have picked out many interesting looking sitting cuties for Drew. Also, one of my 5th graders gave me a tour of the site, and they have Pokemons for everything, including refrigerators and washing machines. Well, that's all I have for now. Thanks for listening.
Wow, incredible stuff. So I think it goes without saying that the Breloom will be named Mother. For the other two, I'm going with Dodrio for something old, making the left column normal type, and then Scizor for something new, making the right column final evolution. This might make the last row a little tough, just because we'll have to build that team off of the full grid's confines, but I'm gonna cross that bridge when I get to it. That is definitely a future Droomish problem. Right now Droomish is heading into the pyramid with Team Mother for round 2 and dual type for the row. Now I think this team is relatively standard on the end of Scizor and Breloom. Very strong typings with a lot of good options into the Reggies waiting at the end, along with enough bases covered to deal with the random nonsense along the way. I was originally very excited about having Diamond the Dodrio, named as such because he's become quite a player in his own way, using the ability Runaway so I could just totally disengage from the random encounters. But ahaha! They seem to have disabled its functionality specifically at the pyramid, so it remains a useless ability for battles, which is really strange. But I guess they needed to do something about clearly overpowered Pokemon like Raticate and Furret for making a mess of this place. But I still want to try and get into the spirit of things, so I'm instead setting up Diamond with Early Bird and Rest. Self-healing is at a huge premium in this dungeon, and then Early Bird dropping the number of turns that Diamond stays asleep makes it a very usable out. Each round of 7's encounters have also been organized by type, so Breloom and Scizor can cover Dodrio for the electric round, and then Dodrio can cover for them on the fire round, because Team Mother is all about the power of friendship. And that's a great trope, by the way. Don't talk bad about it. I'm really excited to watch the new Fairy Tail series, but I digress. In the end, the vision for Team Mother really panned out. Even though Diamond got downed while I was out of revives on the fire floors, they still did what was required of them by getting Mother and Dark Bruh to the boss fight at the top. And once there, Mother engaged in an absolutely nasty sweep against the king. She does notably have Spore as a level 50 Breloom despite Shroomish learning the move at 54, but this comes as a result of a breeding mechanic where if both parents know a move the child can learn by level up, the child will get that move too. As such, level 5 Shroomish with Spore ready to get built. Let's freaking go. And so Spore into Brick Break with the tiniest bit of help against Regice was all Mother needed to give the king the business. Another successful set of Pyramid Lords on the Pokedoku, which finally takes us to the final round and final row. The consequences of my actions have unsurprisingly caught up with me, and in order to make the entire grid work, I'm going to make this row flying type and attempt the rare Battle Pyramid Monotype challenge. So to finish the normal column, we'll go with Pidgeot, go for a big swing with Tina. Then I'll make the grass column Jumpluff and call on my old pal Junior to fill the role. For the final evolution column, I'm gonna go with Gyarados because we definitely need a clean sweeper to act as the foundation of this team. Minnesota is the right fish for the job. Now while it might seem like cope, I don't think this team is actually all that bad because the rounds are organized by type. Certainly the electric type round is going to pose the biggest risk, but if I can get through that, then I'm golden. And unlike Dodrio, Pidgeot and Gyarados come with abilities that actually do offer an out-of-the-box advantage, as their respective Keen-Eye and Intimidate reduce the number of random encounters with lower level Pokemon if they're leading the party, which is a really nice touch. And the team works pretty well. And by works pretty well, I mean Junior and Tina are riding on Minnesota's shoulders heroes like Team Rose and Sonic Heroes, but everything's working out regardless. And to all the haters out there named Minun saying that Gyarados has a 4 times weakness to electric, all I have to say is that he gets Earthquake too, you sad, pathetic clown. And I was actually quite surprised with the performance on this run. While Minnesota was as reliable as I was imagining, Tina and Junior both had clutch moments that bailed us out of some really tough situations, so they did great as well. There was an extremely unfortunate wipeout literal steps away from the final warp title, but we ran it back for a much more calculated and ultimately successful run. This time we got to the top almost no problem and with items to spare, but I was still terrified of one thing. Under most circumstances, Brandon's Regice demolishes every member of this team and counters every tool at their disposal. It's got a Chesto Berry, so I can't use Sleep Powder without a 4 times weakness Ice Beam. It's got monstrous physical bulk and thunder, so Minnesota can't go blow for blow with it. But in an unreal turn of events, it was Tina who defied all expectations and landed a double-edged crit to save the team. She was the party member I had the least faith in for this situation, and yet she hit it out of the park. And after that, it was just a matter of time before Junior slowly whittled away Registeel with a substitute Leet Seed combo. After a long fought match, a team with no business being here had done the unthinkable and triumphed over the golems. Our final and perhaps bravest set of Pyramid Lords are in the books. With the dust settled on the final climb, both puzzles are completed. A bit of a breakdown on one of my favorite dungeons in the series, a Pokedoku filled out, and just maybe, perhaps even a bit more appreciation for both of these fine works. Here's hoping at least. Given my premise, I had to only use Pokemon available in Emerald for the Pokedoku, but you can go fill out your own with whatever you want on today's puzzle. Give some love to our old friend Barbaracle if you're so inclined. Big thanks again to the kind folks over at Pokedoku for letting me do a puzzle and featuring me as a creator. You can find their links down in the description. That's all I got for you folks. Let me know what you thought down below, who you're bringing to the pyramid, and I'll see y'all next time. Droomish out.